Yes, please. Bye now.
All right.
Hi. How's everybody doing? It's Thursday. Yay, in case anybody, was unaware of that fact. Super close to the weekend. Okay, 3 things I want to talk about on my, this is my planner, and I love it. But anyways, I kind of put some little extras on it yesterday. We have be present, be bold, and be fierce. Okay, just 3 little things that I want everybody to think about. And yes, these are my my scrubs. This is what I call my rise and grind outfit. So no making fun. Most people know that I usually just wear black, but every once in a while I go outside of my comfort zone. Actually, I don't even really have a comfort zone anymore. So here we are, grit. We're finishing up Distracted by Talent, and tonight we're going to start Effort Counts Twice. Okay, so is talent a bad thing? Are we all equally talented? No and no. The ability to quickly climb the learning curve of any skill is obviously a very good thing, and like it or not, some of us are better at it than others. So why then is it such a bad thing to favor naturals over strivers? What's the downside of television shows like America's Got Talent, The X Factor, and Child Genius? Hey, America's Got Talent. That's what I should go on.
You gotta have talent first.
Oh, why shouldn't we separate children as young as 7 or 8 into 2 groups? Those few children who are gifted and talented, and the many, many more who aren't. What harm is there really in a talent show being named a talent show? In my view, the biggest reason a preoccupation with talent can be harmful is simple. By shining our spotlight on talent, we risk leaving everything else in the shadows. We inadvertently send the message that these other factors, including grit, don't matter as much as they really do. Consider, for example, the story of Scott Barry Kaufman. Scott's office is just 2 doors down from mine, and he's a lot like the other academic psychologists I know. He spends most of his waking hours reading, thinking, collecting data, doing statistics, and writing. Ooh. He publishes his research in scientific journals. He knows a lot of oh my god, this just pisses me off like no other. Like every day there has to be a word in here that looks like a foreign language. Polysyllabic. I don't know. Holler if you know how that's actually supposed to be pronounced. He knows a lot of polysyllabic words. I'm probably putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. He has degrees from Carnegie Mellon, Cambridge University, and Yale. He plays the cello for fun. But as a child, Scott was considered a slow learner, which was true. Basically, I got a lot of ear infections as a kid, Scott explains, and that led to this problem with processing information from sound in real time. I was always a step or 2 behind the other kids in my class, so halting was his academic progress. In fact, that he was placed in special education classes. He repeated 3rd grade. Around the same time, he met with the school psychologist to take an IQ test. In an anxiety-ridden test session he describes as harrowing, Scott performed so poorly that he was sent to a special school for children with learning disabilities. It was not until age 14 that an observant special education teacher took Scott aside and asked why he wasn't in more challenging classes. Until then, Scott had never questioned his intellectual status. Instead, he'd assumed that his lack of talent would put a very low ceiling on what he might do with his life. Meeting a teacher who believed in his potential was a critical turning point, a pivot from "this is all you can do" to "who knows what you can do." At that moment, Scott started wondering, for the very first time, who am I? Am I a learning disabled kid with no real future? Or maybe I'm something else. And then to find out, Scott signed up for just about every challenge his school had to offer. Latin class, the school musical, choir. He didn't necessarily excel in everything, but he learned in all. What Scott learned is that he wasn't hopeless. Something that Scott found he did learn fairly easily was the cello. His grandfather had been a cellist in the Philadelphia Orchestra for nearly 50 years, and Scott had the idea that his grandfather could give him lessons. He did, and the summer that Scott first picked up the cello, he began practicing 8 or 9 hours a day. He was fiercely determined to improve, and not only because he enjoyed the cello. I was so driven to just show anyone, that I was intellectually capable of anything. At this point, I didn't even care what it was. Improve he did, and by the fall he earned a seat in his high school orchestra. If the story ended there and then, it might not be about grit. But here's what happened next. Scott kept up and even increased his practicing. He skipped lunch to practice. Sometimes he skipped classes to practice. By senior year, he was second chair. He was the second best cellist in the orchestra, and he was in the choir too, and winning all kinds of awards from the music department. Scott just out there killing it. He also started doing well in his classes, many of which were now honors classes. Almost all of his friends were in the gifted and talented program. Scott wanted to join them. He wanted to talk about Play-Doh and do mental puzzle. That's Play-Doh, P-L-A-T-O, not like Play-Doh, like the kind of Play-Doh that we have at my house. Do mental puzzles and learn more than he was already learning. Of course, with his IQ scores from childhood, there was no such possibility. He remembers the school psychologist drawing a bell-shaped curve on the back of a napkin and pointing to its peak. This is average. Then moving to the right. This is where you'd have to be for gifted and talented classes. And then moving to the left. And this is where you are. At what point, Scott asked, does achievement trump potential? The school psychologist shook his head and showed Scott the door. That fall, Scott decided he wanted to study this thing called intelligence and come to his own conclusions. He applied to the cognitive science program at Carnegie Mellon University and was rejected. The rejection letter did not specify why, of course, but given his stellar grades and extracurricular accomplishments, Scott could only conclude that the impediment was his low SAT scores. I had this grit, Scott recalls. I said, I'm going to do it. I don't care. I'm going to find a way to study what I want to study. And then he auditioned for Carnegie Mellon's opera program. Why? Because the opera program didn't look very hard at SAT scores, focusing instead on musical aptitude and expression. In his first year, Scott took a psychology course as an elective. Soon after, he added psychology as a minor. Next, he transferred his major from opera to psychology, and then he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. Like Scott, I took an IQ test early in my schooling and was deemed insufficiently bright to benefit from gifted and talented classes. For whatever reason, maybe a teacher asked that I be retested. I was evaluated again the following year, and I made the cut. I guess you could say I was borderline gifted. One way to interpret these stories is that talent is great, but tests of talent stink. They suck. They're inaccurate. There's certainly an argument to be made that tests of talent and tests of anything else psychologists study, including grit, are highly imperfect. But another conclusion is that the focus on talent distracts us from something that is at least as important, and that is effort. In the next chapter, I'll argue that as much as talent counts, effort counts twice. All right, y'all, that's that. I hope you guys are enjoying this book, and I hope that you have takeaways from this book that you can apply to everyday life, because they're in there. They really are. Thanks for joining me. Much love.